Now we come across the ruins of Cockersands Abbey, one of only 3 Premonstratensian monasteries in Lancashire. The Premonstratensians were a very strict order of Augustinian monks. But all that now remains is the chapter house and the portions of the nave and eastern walls and north and south transepts, plus various scattered fragments of masonry, some of which can be seen in the nearby farm. The historian John Leyland describes the abbey as standing very bleakly and object to all winds. The sea has encroached considerably since the abbey was founded during the reign of Richard I, Richard the Lionheart, in 1180. It's hard to imagine, but at the dissolution, Cockersands was the 3rd richest abbey in Lancashire. The chapter house eventually became the burial place for members of the Dalton family from Thurnham Hall. The abbey's unique 14th century choir stalls can still be seen to this day in the Priory Church next to Lancaster Castle. Rare surviving examples from that period. And now the abbey stands isolated and forlorn, overlooking the estuary and the Abbey Lighthouse, where the mighty River Lune enters majestic Morecambe Bay. Close by Cockersands Abbey, we come across an example of how, for centuries, the bay has been a source of food for all the villages surrounding it. The River Lune is famous for its salmon, and here the very ancient and traditional way of fishing, halve netting, is still carried out by William Armour and John Gerard.
Myself, I've been probably fishing about 43 years, something like that, this type of fishing. John?
No, this is my first year. I was draw netting till now.
The basic principle of hafe netting is that you're standing against, you're facing into the current, and hopefully the salmon, as they're either on the ebb tide, they're dropping back to meet the flood tide, and hopefully they'll come into your net. And also, same again on the flood tide, you're standing facing the current, and the salmon are coming in, trying to get further upstream. And again, hopefully, if you're successful, you'll catch one. But there's many times you don't catch them.
Across the river is Sunderland Point, where they still fish using traditional whammel nets. The fishermen go out into the estuary and play a net out as they go round in a big circle. Originally just a place where the ships which traded with Africa and the West Indies could settle on the sand and offload their goods into smaller boats or into carts for transshipment up to Lancaster. Yes, Lancaster was part of the slave trade. In fact, at its peak, it was the 4th largest dock in the country. The quay and warehouses were built at the turn of the 17th century by the enterprising Lancaster businessman Robert Lawson. The heady aroma of spices, sugar, tobacco, rum and mahogany. And those buildings can still be seen today, but now the warehouses are private houses. It was once famous for its cotton tree, which grew here, and the story of how the first bale of American cotton in England was landed and stored here in about 1700s. According to Kew Gardens, the tree was actually a black poplar. It's a picturesque place, often used as a film location, and a perfect spot to watch the migrating seabirds which drop into Morecambe Bay. Sadly, the hamlet may eventually disappear as the sea is gradually wearing the fields away. And the hamlet is cut off by the tide twice a day, so be wary of the tide times. But here is to be found the lovely story of Sambo. A businessman brought a sickly black slave back with him from America, but whilst his master travelled on up the river to Lancaster, Sambo remained in Sunderland Point. He died, and the local fishermen took pity on him and buried him in a nearby field. He couldn't be interred in a consecrated ground because he was regarded as a heathen. To this very day, children from the village and even adults from much farther afield keep up the tradition of placing fresh wildflowers or painted stones on Sambo's grave, and that the memory of Sambo continues to live on through our young people. Full many a sandbird chirps upon the sod, and many a moonlight elfin round him trips. Full many a summer's sunbeam warms the clod, and many a teeming cloud upon him drips. But still he sleeps, till the awakening sounds of the archangel's trump now life impart. Then the great judge his approbation founds, not on man's colour, but his worth of heart. Eventually, the silting up of the river and the building of a new port in 19th century Glastondock saw the demise of Sunderland Point.